evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We will be getting started in just a few moments. We're just going to give some people some time to join us this evening. But thanks for being here. So we'll do some quick introductions while we have some people joining. So good evening. Thank you for joining us for the reapplication webinar for returning student housing application for the 2026-2027 academic year with Housing and Residence Life. We have a packed agenda this evening, but we will have plenty of times for questions. Just to kind of do some housekeeping at the beginning, you can feel free to drop your questions in the Q&A a box, or you can message the host and different panelists here in the webinar. We will be recording the session, so if you want to return or you want someone else to watch later, we will be recording and posting on the Division of Student Affairs YouTube channel later this week, and we will also put that on our website when it becomes available. But thanks so much for being here live. All right, so we'll just jump right into our agenda here. So we have a number of people with us this evening. So we'll do some quick introductions. We'll go through the residency requirement for this next year, and then we'll actually get into the application process for the next year, the timeline, the different steps, how to cancel, what rolling reapplication is, and some different housing perks and incentives that we have coming up for this year. We'll go through all of the residence halls, the overview and eligibility for each one, and then we'll go through at the very end some off-campus housing resources and just some general tips. If at the end of this you decide maybe on-campus housing isn't for you, we'll have some options for you right at the end. So for some instructions here, I can get us started. My name is Kaylee McDonald. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the Associate Director for Housing Assignments and Communications at AU Housing Residence Life, and I will pass it over to Kiana.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kiana Bowen. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the Assistant Director of Housing Assignments. And I'm going to pass it to Shamira.
Hi, everyone. My name is Shamira James. I'm the Marketing and Communications Coordinator for Housing and Res Life, pronoun she, her. It's nice to meet you all tonight. I'll hand it over to Lauren.
Hi, my name is Lauren So. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm one of the housing assignment specialists. And I will pass it on to Sam.
Hi, my name is Sam Lewis, she, her pronouns, and I am the other housing assignment specialist.
Awesome. So this team here will be hosting the webinar this evening, but if you ever want to get in contact with us at Housing Residence Life, we are physically located in one of our residence halls, Anderson Hall. We're on the first floor. We're open traditional kind of business hours, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 Eastern. You can always email us. We'll always get back to you, or give us a phone call. And then we do also have a live chat Monday through Friday from 1 to 4. If you have just a really quick question, you can feel free to send us over a chat. And then any kind of one of us or one of our staff members will respond to your questions. So the first thing here I'll get into is our housing requirement. So our housing requirement is required for the first 2 years. So incoming first-year students and rising sophomores are required to live on campus. A student's classification really aligns with their cohort year. It's not necessarily how many credits they have. So if you have a student, or if you are a student that maybe took classes in high school, got some extra college credit, that doesn't necessarily mean that you would be opted out of the residency requirement. It would be based off of your kind of admission status when you come to the university. All sophomore students just being our reapplication webinar, are required to complete a housing application and do the room selection process. We will talk a little bit about exemptions later on, but since it is required to live on campus, sophomores need to be completing the process we'll be going through shortly. And then the exemptions from the residency requirement are all available on our website, but it is submitted through the housing application within the housing portal. So there's not a separate form to go through. It is just straight through the application, and you submit the additional documents to be considered for an exemption. Just some general information about living on campus. So we do have about 28% of our upper class students who are not required to live on campus, who decide to stay on campus with us. And signing up for on-campus housing does include the full 2026-2027 academic year. So it's both semesters. Now we do have a number of, exemptions from that. So if you're a student that is graduating at the end of December, obviously you won't be on campus anymore. You won't even be at AU. So you'll be able to get out of your housing contract. But if you're studying abroad mid-year, or if you're, taking leave of absence, those are reasons that kind of we would allow you to go out of the contract early. And then I like to always mention, in terms of the residential living aspect of the halls, all of the halls have resident assistants on each floor, sometimes multiple resident assistants to support our students. And then we do have professional community directors in each building. These are master's level live-in staff that are there to support residents 24/7 and also to provide just kind of some community building events. And now I'll pass it over to Lauren.
All right. Well, here is our reapplication process. So this is what our reapplication timeline will look like. I'll walk you through the timeline and highlight some of our important dates. First will be our housing application and roommate matching portal, which opened on February 2nd at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. So students can log into the housing portal, click the reapplication returning students button, and complete the application. Once the application is submitted, students are prompted to start roommate matching. So this step will be optional, but we highly recommend doing this step. It gives students the opportunity to choose who they want to live with. If they decide not to participate in roommate matching, they will be placed with another student through our random assignment process. We are offering early application incentives this year, so students who submitted their application by February 15th and hold their assignments will receive a $100 credit on their student account, and then students who apply by March 1st and hold their assignments will receive a $50 credit. So we always encourage students to apply early, and this is kind of one of the ways that we like to reward that. For our rising sophomores, February 23rd is a very important date coming up. If a rising sophomore is hoping to live off campus, they must submit an exemption request by this date. We will talk more about the exemption process and what that looks like and who qualifies, but February 23rd is that key deadline to remember. Then room selection for sophomores will take place between March 18th through March 20th, right after spring break. So sophomores have until March 23rd at 9 a.m. to self-select a space. If they if they don't choose a room by this deadline, our team will manually assign them to make sure that they have a housing assignment secured. Even if a student is manually placed, they can continue to adjust their room assignment through June 15th. Then follows the upper division room selection on March 23rd through March 25th, and each student receives a randomly generated time slot. So within a roommate group, the person with the earliest time slot may select on behalf of the entire group. And because time slots are random, we cannot adjust them or provide priority to specific groups. And then after March 25th, we move into what we call rolling reapplication. And from that point through June 15th, students can continue selecting or changing their housing assignments as spaces become available. And then one final date to know is March 31st at 11:59 Eastern Time. This is the cancellation deadline without a fee. So upper division students who cancel by this deadline will not be charged. Rising sophomores, however, must again submit an exemption request by the 23rd if they intend to live off campus. And I know that this is a lot of information, but we will be diving into more of the specifics of these dates and processes in the next slides. Okay. And now we're gonna kind of walk through what the actual application will look like step by step so everyone knows what to expect. So the first step is completing the housing application, which opened again on February 2nd. And students will start by confirming their contact information, their emergency contact details, and after that, they will complete a lifestyle profile questionnaire. This will include like preferences, such as guest comfort levels, whether they are early risers or night owls, or cleanliness habits and other day-to-day living preferences. There is also a short bio section. This is where students can share a little bit about themselves. For example, I would write, "Hi, my name is Lauren. I love indie rock and running." So this helps potential roommate groups get a better sense of who they are beyond just the check boxes. Next, students will review and sign the housing license agreement. So this agreement covers the entire academic year. So we strongly encourage students to read it carefully. And once the agreement is signed using the student's AUID, they will receive a confirmation email and can move forward in the process. Students will then see information about renter's insurance. We do recommend that all students carry renter's insurance as the university is not responsible for personal belongings. Students will also have the opportunity to indicate interest in specific housing considerations. So this will include disability-related housing accommodations through the Academic Support and Access Center and gender-based housing considerations through the Center for Student Belonging. It is important to note that indicating interest in these options does not automatically place a student into the accommodations. Instead, our team will share the information with that appropriate office and then follow up directly with that office and the student about next steps and eligibility. And finally, students can express interest in theme communities and living learning communities directly within the applications. And if they're interested in a specific community, this is where they can let us know and provide any additional information that may be requested. So I touched a little bit on some of this, but all gender housing versus gender-based housing considerations, what does that mean? So this is an area that sometimes causes confusion. So we're going to talk about the difference between these two options. So all gender housing allows students to live with other students who have opted in regardless of gender, gender identity, gender expression, or sex assigned at birth. So students can opt in or out directly through the housing portal at any time during the application process. And when a student opts in, their room profile is coded as gender neutral. So this means students of any gender who have also opted in are eligible to join the room. I also wanted to make it clear that all of our residence halls floors are co-ed with the exception of the all-female floor. So opting into all gender does not change the floor. It only changes how the room itself is coded in the system. And for many students, this is simply a preference-based choice that allows flexibility in roommate selection, whereas gender-based housing considerations will be different. This is more of an individualized process for students who have specific housing needs related to their gender identity. So examples might include access to gender-neutral restrooms, support in finding a trans-inclusive housing environment, or assistance navigating roommate considerations connected to gender identity. So students can indicate interest in this process through the housing portal, but it is required for the student to submit an additional form through the student belonging or the Center for Student Belonging. And then from there, Housing and Residence Life, we will then work closely with TSB to make sure that the student's needs and considerations are met. And then after the application, once a student submits their housing application, they can preview the next steps, like important upcoming dates and roommate matching. For sophomores, this is also when the exemption portal becomes available. Students must complete and submit their housing application before they can access the exemption form. So completing the application will be the first step in either path. And Kiana will be talking more about what our exemption process will look like.
Yes, so we want all of our students to live on campus, but there may be some reasons why a student may need to submit an exemption. So here are a couple guidelines that we have to be able to see if you are eligible to be able to submit that exemption. So students may apply for exemptions from the residency requirement if they meet the following criteria. So if a student is 22 years or older by August 1st of their first year residency requirement, if a student is married or in a domestic partnership by August 1st of that year, if a student is a parent or legal guardian of a minor that resides with a student, if the student lives with a parent or guardian at their permanent residence that is within 25 miles of campus, if a student is studying abroad or veteran status, and exemptions may also be submitted based on disability requirements or religious beliefs, but that is going to be processed through a different office. So that is going to be different forms that you are going to have to submit with that particular office. For students who are wanting to request an exemption, students may request an exemption on the housing portal after completing the initial housing application for the academic year. And for our rising sophomores right now, those are going to be due by February 23rd. So that is a hard deadline for them. Each exemption request is going to require different and specific documentation to be submitted along with the application, which is outlined in the housing portal. And exemption requests are reviewed on a rolling basis by our housing staff. And for the sophomore students, the rising sophomore students, that will be no later than the start of the sophomore housing selection, which is scheduled for March 18th. So the exemption submission process is going to be something that students are going to want to know. So everything is going to be completed through the AU housing portal for non-disability related and religious requests. So again, if you do have those exemptions that you do want to submit for those disability related or religious requests, that is going to be through a different office. It is going to immediately follow the completion of your application. So the students are going to be prompted through a drop-down menu if they want to continue through or if they want to view the exemption process instructions and details. And if a student is going to select the exemption type, they are going to have to submit that additional documentation along with that request. So with the exemption processing, students are always going to get a decision on their exemption no matter what. So it's either going to be an approval or a denial for the students. For the approvals, students are always going to be notified via their email. So they want to make sure to keep an eye on. Our housing staff will cancel that on behalf of the student. And no additional action is going to be needed for the student for the academic year. So they're going to be good to go once they get that approval for that exemption. For the students that are denied an exemption, they're also going to be notified through their AU email, and they should by all means go and self-select a space, or if they fail to do so, that will be automatically assigned to them by our housing staff. And those housing charges that come with that assignment are going to remain on that student's account. If a student is exempt for the last year, so for the 25, 26 academic year as the first time freshman, they are going to be required to submit another exemption for this upcoming year. So again, it's not going to follow through for the last academic. And I'm going to pass it to Sam to talk about our roommate matching. Oh,
I'll
sorry,
take
I'm
on
going to
roommate
pass it
matching.
to Lauren. I'm so sorry.
No worries. So the second step will be roommate matching. So roommate matching opened at the same time as the housing application, so step one on February 2nd. So this step is completely optional, but we do strongly encourage students to participate because it gives them the opportunity to search for roommates and create a roommate group with people they intentionally choose rather than being randomly assigned. So roommate groups can range from a minimum of 2 students to a maximum of 6. And there are two main ways for students to find roommates. So first, they can view suggested matches. So these suggestions are based on lifestyle questionnaire in the application, or students can search for specific individuals using AUID, my AU username, or a screen name. And if a student searches for someone and that person is not appearing in the system, it may be because one of these road bumps. So one possibility is gender classification. All students in a roommate group must have matching gender classifications in the system. If someone has opted in or out of all gender housing, that can affect visibility. So it is important to double check those settings. Another common issue is housing community selection. So all students in the group must be in the same community, whether that is a living learning community, a theme community, or just general population. And then finally, each student can only belong to one roommate group at a time, and each group can only have one group leader. So if someone is already in a different group or if there are multiple leaders set up, students may not be able to find each other. And if anyone runs into these challenges, our team is always available to help troubleshoot. So this is what the roommate matching page looks like in the housing portal for the students. And at the top of the page, students will see their classification, and it usually also shows like their housing community and gender classification. So these details will be important because they will determine whether you see your roommates or whether you're eligible to match with these other students. And below that, the students will see the two options we discussed, so viewing suggested roommates or searching for a specific roommate. And if they choose suggested roommates, they can browse students who share the same classification, community, and gender settings. The system will also show a compatibility percentage based off of their lifestyle questionnaire responses. And students can view short bios to get a better sense of personality and interest before making that decision. And if they're searching for a specific roommate, they can enter that student's AUID, AU username, or screen name. One of these fields, only one of the fields really needs to be completed. I usually recommend using the AUID function since it must match exactly, and that's really the most reliable way to find someone. Once they find the person they are looking for, they can view the profile, send a message, or invite the roommate to their group. Before sending invitations, it is important to make sure only one person in the group is designated as the group leader. And when an invitation is sent, the other students must accept the request in order to officially join the roommate group. And until it is accepted, the group will not be finalized. So this is what that will look like. Students can also leave roommate groups and join other ones. However, they cannot join multiple groups at the same time. And finally, step 3, this is room selection. So room selection time slots are randomly assigned for each returning student. They run from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. every day between March 18th and March 25th. So sophomores will select between March 18th and March 20th. And if any sophomore has not self-selected a room by March 23rd at 9 a.m., we will manually place them to ensure that they have a place reserved that meets the residency requirement. And these students can still make changes during the rolling reapplication period through June 15th. Upper division students will select between March 23rd and the 25th. Within a roommate group, the student with the earliest time slot selects the room for the entire group. I want to emphasize that it is very important to solidify roommate groups before selecting a space, and any modifications to the group after selection cannot be added to the room. So if a student is added to the group after selecting a room, they will not be pulled into the space and will have to wait until their time slot. Students not in a roommate group can still preview potential roommates' profiles before selecting a half-filled space. After selection is complete, students in half-filled rooms will be paired with others who are not in roommate groups. So this process makes sure everyone is placed fairly and the rooms are consolidated to open up spaces for roommate groups. A lot of the students will just pick a vacant space, and we don't recommend this unless the student is comfortable with being randomly assigned a roommate later, because choosing a space with at least one other student, even without a full group, gives students a little bit more control with who they live with. And so, as you saw, this is what the students will see. They'll choose their hall, their room. Floor plans will be available during selection to help decide which room they want. And once the room is chosen, students will assign everyone in their group to bed spaces. They cannot assign specific beds like the one by the window or the one by the door. That is kind of something that you decide amongst your group. And then if students want to change their bed assignment or switch rooms, they can just do so until June 15th on their own. After that, they will just need to have to wait until the room change period, which is about 3 weeks into the semester. And once the room and roommates are confirmed, students simply just add the room to their cart, add their roommates to the bed, and check out. Then the space is just secured. And I will pass it off to Kiana to talk about cancellation.
All right, so we thank you, Lauren. So we're going to talk about the cancellation timeline. So this is going to be something that is going to be very important for the students to be mindful of when it comes to when they're canceling their application. So the first deadline to cancel with no fee is going to be March 31st by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. Then we're going to hop into April 1st. So as soon as April 1st hits, that cancellation fee is going to be $1,000. We're going to go to May 1st, and the cancellation fee is going to be $1,500. For June 1st, the cancellation fee is going to be $2,000. And once it hits July 1st, cancellation fee is going to be $2,500. So you would have to cancel that by 11:59 p.m. And then finally, to be able to cancel you with the fee, it's going to be the full fee of the housing cost is going to be August 1st. So by 11:59, they're going to have to cancel that without that. So with the cancellation timeline, it only applies to the students who are not required to live on campus. So as we know, first year and rising sophomores are required to live on campus. So this is only for our upper level students. Cancellations are all submitted through the AU housing portal. And if a student receives their housing assignment after April 1st, they will have 72 hours to cancel before cancellation fees go into effect for them. So only thing that penalizes a student is once they get an assignment. So a student can stay with the application for as long until they get that assignment. That's when those penalizations come in after 72 hours. So we want to be able to incentivize and be able to benefit our students that want to live on campus. So like Lauren had mentioned before, we do offer a promotional account dining dollars for students. So the $100 credit, if they did apply by February 15th, that is going to be applied to their account in the fall time. And if they are applying between February 15th and March 1st, it will be that $50 credit for them. And that will be applied to them in the fall time. Once we confirm that they've moved in and everything, that will be loaded onto their account for them. So we have some students who may not be, who may not select at all, or may be a little bit uncertain with the assignment that they already have, and they kind of want to window shop a little bit. So we have a rolling reapplication period for students. So the rolling reapplication period is after our initial room selection period. So that's going to start at the end of March, and it's going to end at June 15th. And so our housing staff will email students that are still waiting on an assignment before those cancellation fees actually increase, because we do see more cancellation during that time. And if a student does need to cancel their assignment, that space will immediately become available. So if another student is getting right on that portal, they'll be able to select that space once that other student cancels. And then I'm going to pass it to Sam and talk about residential communities.
All right, yeah, so let's get into our residential communities. Our first one is going to be all female housing. It's offered to first year students, but drumroll please, this year it is now offered for our sophomore students. The community is an opt-in for female identifying students. You simply opt in within the housing portal and we will confirm your interest living on the floor. And big thing is you can still participate in any of those living learning communities, so long as they receive confirmation from the program that you're going to be living outside, and then you're able to still participate in those programs. And then for this academic year, 2 floors will be dedicated to all female housing in Hughes Hall. And then Sankofa House, 6 years strong, was established in 2020. It's a vibrant themed community for students interested in exploring Black culture, history, identity, and the intellectual traditions of the African diaspora. Like all of our themed communities, it's open to all class levels, and interested students can select Sankofa House within their housing application. And it is located in our newly renovated Roper Hall. And our second theme community is going to be First Flight. It's a supportive community, enriching residential community designed for students who are the first in their families to pursue higher education. Like the previous, it's open to all class levels. Students indicate in their housing application, and it's located on one floor of Leonard Hall. And our last named community is going to be Eagles in Community. It's an affirming residential community that enhances the intellectual and cultural environment of campus by exploring historical and contemporary experiences of the LGBTQIA community. And as the past two, open to all class levels, and you indicate in your housing application, and it'll be located on one floor of McDowell Hall.
Okay, so we've talked about kind of the different communities in the halls. We've talked about the rules and stipulations for students living in the halls. I'm going to go over, just kind of give a quick run through of what you can expect in each of the residence halls and who is eligible for what space. So first, starting off of where kind of each hall kind of groups, we're starting with South Side of campus. Like we said earlier, our office is in Anderson, but Anderson, Centennial, Letts, and Roper all make up the South Side of campus. The next, popping on over to East Campus, this is going to be Constitution, Duber, and Federal Hall. On the north side of campus, we have Cassell, Hughes, Leonard, and McDowell Hall. And then just past of the north side, we have Nebraska Hall. And then in Tenleytown, which is where our AU shuttle goes to, we have our frequency apartments. This can be super helpful if you are one to choose your hall based on, where you have the most classes, maybe what shuttle stop you prefer, things like that. So when we look kind of at what all the halls have in common for the most part, Lauren said this earlier, but all of our floors are co-ed outside of our two all-female floors, meaning again that all of the floors are welcome to all genders that choose to live in a space. They do not change based on the different all gender housing like considerations that we have. All of our floors remain co-ed. In each building, there will be kitchens, community lounges, and laundry facilities located on each residential floor. This is especially common in our traditional hall spaces. Something else for our traditional halls is that they are upkept daily, early, bright and early by our lovely partners in our housekeeping facility staff. They are gems and they do such a wonderful job keeping the halls clean and livable for all of our residents. And we have all this information on our website with our virtual tours. We work with a third-party company to make sure that we're getting really accurate and just really well done virtual tours. You can look at the rooms from a bird's eye view as you see on screen, or you can start the tour yourself and you can kind of put yourself in the space, move around, you can take measurements and stuff. It's a very interactive way to look at the space and really get best acclimated before you select a space. So for our rising sophomores, there's going to be two types of housing options that are available. Of course, many of you are probably familiar or most familiar with our traditional style halls. These types of buildings, the biggest difference between the second type of room style we'll talk about is that these are rooms with communal bathrooms, obviously outside of the rooms. The communal bathrooms will vary depending on the halls. So in Let's Hall, we have your typical gendered bathrooms, whereas though compared to Leonard and McDowell, which are renovated halls, they have the pod style bathrooms, which is like our these are bathrooms that are open for all genders on the floor. They have floor to ceiling lockable pods. In the pods, there's a toilet and a shower, but they are open to everyone on the floor. In Let's, you will come across your typical double occupancy rooms, and in Leonard and McDowell, we are offering, or I'll start with Leonard actually. In Leonard, we have singles and double occupancy. We will talk about the single room buyouts in the second. And McDowell, we have the singles, the doubles, and some triples available. Next is the ever popular suite style room. So these are going to be the spaces where you have the suite and the private bathroom, and you have like some communal shared spaces. Cassell is always going to be the most popular. She is forever popular. I think she'll just go down in history as such. But Cassell is our most popular one. It's 2 to 3 shared bedrooms in a living space with 4 to 6 people. Centennial, which is Centennial, again, suite style. This is popular, obviously, amongst our incoming first year students, but obviously our rising sophomores as well. These are going to be 2 rooms on either side, connected by a bathroom. And then on East Campus, you have shared bedrooms with private bathrooms, and these are just doubles as well. Suite style is very popular for our rising sophomores. And the thing that I think I want to stress the most on this is I've emphasized how popular they are. they do go rather quickly. And obviously, we have to have some spaces set aside in Centennial for our first year students. So we highly recommend for students to rank your preferences. Obviously, we know Casella is your top choice, but if you are um, one of the maybe less fortunate to have that last selection slot, you do have to be really realistic about what's left. And we always encourage students that obviously we know your top choice might be a suite style space, but you can still have a good time, engage with a community that is still here to help you exist in a residential community that is focused on programming and holistic development and things like that. So on to what's available to our upper division students. So again, we will have some traditional spaces. Again, remembering that there's two types of bathrooms, or sorry, I'm reading ahead. You have the communal bathroom styles with the pod style bathrooms. These are going to be available to students in Leonard and McDowell Hall. Again, we have those single and double occupancy rooms. This mainly applies to our upper division students who end up living in the two theme communities that Sam talked about earlier. So that's for the traditional style. And then again, suite style rooms, we kind of went over that previously, but that's going to be suites with private bathrooms for the residents of that space. And then apartment style. So these are the ones when we get kind of a little bit kind of off campus. We have Nebraska Hall, which has some single occupancy rooms and two, three, or four-person apartments. These kind of spaces have everything that a student would need inside the apartment. So laundry, bathrooms, living room areas. They have like essentially a full-size kitchen. So kind of like really feeds into the apartment style aspect of it all. And then frequency is kind of our off-campus but still AU housing option. So it's going to be right off the shuttle in Tenleytown. It's managed in partnership with a leasing company, but we work really closely with them. There's a community director, one of those master level professionals that Kaylee mentioned earlier. There's a community director that oversees that building. So those residents in frequency still get some bits and pieces of a typical residential community, but they're just, a little bit, they're kind of a little bit separated from the campus. But these apartments they range from 2 to 4 person apartments. Again, they have all of those amenities that you would find in a typical apartment and some things about the building itself. It has on-site gym, study rooms, and parking. And they also get their own mail up there as well. And those are aspects that you work through with the leasing company that sits at that front desk at the building. Now hand it to Kelly to talk about singles.
Thanks. So Shmir mentioned a little bit about we have some traditional style halls that have single occupancy bedrooms. The majority of those bedrooms are going to be what we call double as singles. So these are double occupancy spaces, like you can see in this kind of floor plan that we've kind of reimagined just for a single occupant. So students will select the space as if they're going through the selection process, but they'll be the only person in the room. We will be offering all class levels this option to self-select. So different parts of the floors will be designated as double as single sections. They can select those rooms just like normal. It is first come, first serve since the time slots are completely randomized. So if you get an earlier time slot, you want to kind of double a single for the next year, you can feel free to put yourself in that as well. The thing that I like to really highlight is that if you're a student with accommodations that needs a single because of the Academic and Support and Access Center says you need a single for an accommodation. We hold all of our true single occupancy spaces for those students because they need them. We will still prioritize those students with those accommodations. So whenever you're going into the housing portal, and if you don't have an accommodation, you will be able to see these double as singles. You won't be able to select a true single unless it's in that Nebraska hall, which, like Shreya mentioned, is the whole building single occupancy. So just like to highlight that before we kind of, get into the selection period. So we obviously are here from Housing and Residence Life. We really want you to live on campus and encourage you to live on campus. However, we do like to highlight that we do have some off-campus housing resources, and we want you to be smart about moving off campus if you so choose to. So the kind of first big thing I like to mention is we did do a survey a few years back. So we are located in Ward 3. So this would put us near the Tenleytown, Friendship Heights, Spring Valley, and Cathedral Heights neighborhoods. And just a smattering of students that were polled, most of our students are living in that Tenley Cathedral Heights area, with some kind of going out a little bit further, Glover Park, Georgetown for 10%, and then Van Ness Cleveland Park for 5%, and then just 1% across the city. So most students do end up living quite close to campus, if not directly next to campus. 71% of students do live with others. So half of those students are living with just one other person. Others are living with 2, 3, 4, or 5 plus other people, but most people are living with at least one roommate. And 80% of students that are living off campus do live in an apartment. So while we do have some townhouses in the DC area or some kind of sublet basement units, most people are living in an apartment building, a complex with multiple units. And then the big thing I like to highlight, this is again a couple years old, but I think the data still is pretty close to where we're at now, considering some changes just in rent prices in DC. But it is significantly more expensive to live alone. Living by yourself will run you closer to $1,900, whereas students living with others at the time were spending around $1,300, with all things kind of included, utilities, things like that. There are a number of factors to consider when you're thinking about moving off campus. The first big one is the location or proximity. So thinking about, is it walkable or have easy access to AU? So can you get to classes? Can you get to your on-campus jobs, things like that? But also thinking about what access may look like for other places that are important in your life. So your internship, your job off campus, grocery stores, banks, things like that, that you will frequently go to. How do you get there? What bus lines will take you there? Can you walk? What does it look like at night? Things like that. And like I mentioned, proximity to other items, necessities, grocery stores, restaurants, things like that. Thinking about where those things lie, what you frequent, and then where you kind of want to end up. Next other kind of consideration to think about is the cost. So what is the monthly budget? What are you looking at? And don't just think about the rent. Think about rent, food, transportation. All of those will go into kind of your budget, especially if you're moving off campus. It might be the first time without a meal plan. What are you doing on those days you're coming to campus? Are you packing your lunch? Are you planning to buy? That should be included in your kind of monthly budget. I do like to mention all of our full-time students have that U-Pass, which gives them access to the free Metro bus and Metro. So they can, use that to kind of cut on some transportation costs, but just thinking about that as well. In order to reduce the cost, ask yourself, are you okay sharing a room or sharing an apartment? Because that will decrease or increase your cost depending on your answer. If you're looking at individual units or different spaces, does the rent include any utilities? Does it include any amenities costs? Are there any kind of additions after you think about the base rent? And then you have to consider that may increase that price. And then just securing the apartment. What does the security deposit look like? Is there an application fee? Are those will you get them at the end of the lease? Are they non-refundable? What does that look like? Because that can be some upfront costs that can potentially hinder your ability to apply for multiple apartments, things like that. And then just some other considerations. I always ask, what are you looking for in an off-campus rental? I personally make a list of like 2 or 3 things that for me that are non-negotiable. So for me is windows. I knew I wanted a window. I wanted natural light. So I really try to look at units that would provide some natural light during the day. But is it for you on-site laundry, updated unit or apartments, a private bedroom, things like that? What are you kind of prioritizing? And then what are things that you can maybe do without? The other thing is, what are you looking for in a potential roommate? So your roommate can be your absolute best friend in the entire world, or you can just find someone who maybe just has a similar schedule as you, has a 9 to 5, or has similar class schedule that you can just cohabitate. You don't need to be best friends. So really think about that as well, because that can help, find a new person to live with if you maybe don't know anyone. And then the last thing is just what does the lease look like? So is it a sublet? Is it a 12-month lease? Is it a short-term lease? What does that look like? What is the renewal terms? If you have to sublet, what is the terms on that? If you have to leave early for some reason. So really look at kind of the term dates on that lease, knowing that you may be at school for 9 months out of the year and what will you do for the extra 3 months type of thing. So always some things to consider when you're thinking about moving off campus. I do like to highlight, we do have an off-campus housing site. It runs in partnership with apartments.com. So yes, you could go to apartments.com and find stuff on there. But the great thing about our listing site specifically is that people are posting with the intent of reaching people in the AU community. So, staff, faculty, students, people affiliated to AU, they're looking for renters from our community. The big thing is all of the landlords in apartments must provide a basic business license upon application. So I personally review the basic business license, ensure that they're registered with the city, ensure that they're up to date with all their paperwork to make sure that they are allowed to legally rent to you this apartment. It's great because you can also look at active sublets or just different listings based off of location and price or other criteria, number of bathrooms, number of bedrooms. It's really great to kind of narrow down. And then also in the portal, you can see at the top, there's a roommate section, kind of blocked behind a login, which is your AU login. You will be able to search for a roommate. It's really helpful if you don't know anyone that's moving off campus. You can put a little kind of eHarmony bio about yourself, and you can message people through the portal to see if you want to match as a roommate through this way. So it's only available for our AU community members, so no one else can kind of see that information. And then always, I like to highlight just non-AU resources. So again, apartments.com is always a great resource. Google Maps, if you're just kind of trying to understand different neighborhoods, what they look like, look around the neighborhood, see kind of different buildings or those different amenities in the areas to kind of narrow your search down so you know what you're looking for. And then Facebook groups, AU, not AU, but DC has a lot of really active renting sublet Facebook groups. People are constantly posting on there. So I know Facebook is a little bit out of fashion, but join a couple, you'll never know what you can find on there to see, what even is just available. And then you can try to find them through a more official manner through one of our sites, or through an official site. And then just some last tips. Typically, it's recommended that you start looking about 90 days before you want to move in. So if you're trying to move in for August 1st, it might be a little bit early right now. However, it's not a bad time to just kind of understand what you want to look for. The reason is because most apartment complexes or landlords are asking tenants about 60 days in advance if they would like to renew their lease. So looking about 90 days, you're starting to get those non-renewal notices out. So people will kind of start to open up their units for that early August move-in. The big thing is for DC is familiarizing yourself with DC tenant rights and the Office of the Tenant Advocate. DC is very, very great for tenants if you know your rights. So read up on that, understand what you are required to do. Like if you are in a house, you need to clear your sidewalk if it snows. So little things like that is really important. But knowing what you're responsible for, what your landlord's responsible for, things like that. Another great thing, a little post-pandemic thing of having on-demand virtual tours. We have virtual tours of all of our spaces, but a lot of apartment buildings do have on-demand virtual tours, or would be happy to do kind of like an iPad video tour for you. Just ask. So we know a lot of students leave the DC area over the summer, might not be able to go in person before they leave in May. ask the building if they'd be willing to do a walkthrough with you, just so you can get a feel of the space and not going in blind when you first move in. And then the big thing is once you find a space, be a good neighbor. Meet your neighbors, say hello when you see them on in the hallway or on the sidewalk. Let them know, if you are gonna have, some noise at night, things like that. Just be a good neighbor, because it goes a really long way once you move off campus. All right, so that is our full presentation here this evening. We went through a lot of different information from our application process, the different housing eligibility, and the residency requirements. So we are opening up for any questions, either through the Q&A or over the chat. And while people are thinking of questions, I will just put up on the screen our contact information in case you have any specific questions about your situation. You can always email us at housinginamerican.edu or give us a phone call at 202-885-3370. And again, I'll plug the chat Monday through Fridays, 1 to 4. Really great to just get a quick answer. And our website, like Shamir mentioned, has a ton of information, all of our virtual tours, all the information we talked about this evening is on our website. So please visit that, american.edu/studentaffairs/housing. I'm not seeing any questions, which is fantastic. If people don't have questions, we must have answered them during the webinar, but we'll give just a minute in case. All right, not seeing any questions, but I think I can thank you all for being here. Again, the recording will be made available in the coming days on our website via YouTube. So please feel free to watch it again or visit our website just for general information. But we really appreciate you taking the time this evening to join us, and hope you have a great rest of your week. Thank you.